Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased that you are tuning in again to Finews TV. Today, we talk about the major changes taking place in Swiss private banking. This time, our focus is on the needs and requirements of entrepreneurs and wealthy families. Many of them complain that banks are not servicing them well enough, so they look for alternatives. Bill Suisse is focusing precisely on this client segment. Rémy Savoya, Head of Global Advisory at Bill in Switzerland, is here in the studio to explain what that looks like in practice. Rémy Savoya, thank you very much for coming to the Finews studio. We are talking today about private banking. Many entrepreneurs complain that private banks nowadays promise holistic support, but at the end of the day, deliver silo services. Why should they believe that Bill Suisse is any different?
Thank you, Claude, and it's great to be here. I think, first of all, you have to look at the DNA of the bank. We are part of Banque Internationale Luxembourg, who is a universal bank since 1856. So it's in our DNA since the beginning to finance companies and their owners. So it's a little bit of a different, we are a little bit of a different animal, I would say. Furthermore, especially in Switzerland, we are still, I would say, a new player, not a well-known brand. And so that means we really have to excel in the service that we provide, because that's, our calling card to our clients and new clients.
You mentioned the Swiss banking landscape. There are some big banks. Often they focus on billionaire clients. Would you say that, therefore, mid-size entrepreneurs and family businesses are overlooked by the industry?
Well, if you look at the different types of clients that banks service, clearly, as you said, the large banks focus on the very wealthy clients. And when it comes to more small, medium-sized businesses, they are, I think, very well financed by the local banks, especially in Switzerland. There's a very strong network between UBS, the cantonal banks, etc. But when it comes to more strategic topics and an integrated offering, I think sometimes they are too small for these large players, and that's where clearly we are stepping in with our offering.
You mentioned this integrated wealth management that you offer combined with your global advisory model. What's the real differentiator for Bill?
I think compared to some of our peers, and I go back to what I said at the beginning, our roots are really as a universal bank, so we know and we finance corporates for hundreds of years. So we don't come at it from a pure private banking perspective where we added on top a little bit of corporate know-how and corporate appetite. So that frankly helped us a lot in building this business. I would say the other, it's more of a subtle point, but the other differentiator is that in my experience in our peers in private banking in Switzerland, quite often the corporate business is, first of all, very limited in its scope, and it's also, quote unquote, a service center to the private bank. When I joined, I really wanted that we have the same setup we have in Luxembourg, that we have two autonomous teams that can make their decisions in terms of which clients they want to work with. So of course we do collaborate a lot, but in the end, each team decides if the client, makes sense, fits with the risk appetite. And that means that we do a better choice of choosing who we can work with. And I think we avoid some of the pitfalls that we've seen in other private banks.
Yeah. Now, in today's market, access to credit has tightened dramatically. Can smaller institutions like Bill Suisse truly compete with the lending firepower of global institutions?
Right. I mean, clearly we don't look to compete with global giants. That's not our mandate. That's not our strategy. We are and we will remain a niche player. and our focus is on providing tailor-made solutions to entrepreneurs, business owners, who are our core focus in Switzerland. And for those clients, we have the scale, we have the know-how, we have the expertise. Just to give a sense, we in terms of size, we are roughly the size of the largest cantonal banks. We're single A rated. We're part of a systemically important bank in the Eurozone through our mother company. So for those clients that we address, we clearly have the scale there.
Mm-hmm. Now, talking about banking in Switzerland, we have to mention also the integration of Credit Suisse into UBS. Is this consolidation creating opportunities now, especially for entrepreneurial banks such as Biel Suisse?
Yes. I mean, I would say, first of all, I think UBS is doing a very good job in terms of the integration, and they have really strong teams in Switzerland. Having said this, obviously, they have to make some choices sometimes, and the integration is a complex exercise. So yes, it does open up some opportunities. Having said this, I think it's also a broader. It's not just UBS and Credit Suisse, it's also more broadly banks in general are facing more capital constraints. So, we also have that on top. I would say it does create opportunities. We have to make sure that we get better known by potential clients. Because sometimes, we see that they have worked with UBS and Credit Suisse for decades. So you don't switch from one day to the next like this. So it's a work we have to do. My concern is a little bit that sometimes we see Swiss companies who are, I think, at least in terms of indebtedness and quite conservative. I think my concern sometimes is that we see them canceling or postponing big projects because they fear that they will not get the financing, and that's where we have a role to play, I think.
That's a good point, because entrepreneurs tend to be skeptical of banks and bankers. Why do you think is that so, and how can banks change this perception in your view?
So I'm not an entrepreneur. I can only, respond based on what I hear. I think some of the feedback, some of the comments we get is that too often the relationship managers change too often. So maybe their knowledge of the entrepreneur is a bit limited, and vice versa. The entrepreneur, if he sees different people, is maybe not so keen to invest too much into the relationship. Also, sometimes we hear the feeling that there are certain times of the year when the RM has to push certain products. So that's some of the issues that come back to us. What we try to do, and obviously we're not perfect, but we try to build long-term relationships. So we really favor stability in the team, I would say, so that the entrepreneur sees the same person for many years. And also what we also see is that they want to know that they can deal directly with the decision makers. So it doesn't mean that we'll say yes, but at least what we say, they know, the bank will stand behind it.
Mm-hmm. When you look at the deals that you achieved this year with your team, what they reveal about Bill's strategy?
Thank you. That's a good way for me to explain what we do. I would like to highlight three types of transactions that we've done in the last few months that I think are a great example of how we can bring value to our clients. The first one is, for example, in terms of M&A transactions, we advised a client recently on a strategic acquisition, and we had another client whom we helped in opening its share capital to a strategic investor. I mean, those transactions, they don't come out of thin air. They are the result of many years of relationship building. And if you look at those cases, there are clients that know us for many, many years, that we finance often, both privately and at the level of their companies. And so when the time comes for a strategic enterprise decision, the trust is there. The knowledge is here also in the bank, and that shows then when we run the process, because the buyers or potential investors know of our relationship and the knowledge we have of the company. So that's one example. Second example, and that comes back to what we said about the Swiss banking market and the credit tightening. With our setup where we combine the lending and the advisory practice in one team, that means that when we have cases where it's not a clear-cut bank financing case, we have the ability, and we've done it in a few cases where we have run in parallel a credit process, so the bank going through a credit approval on terms that would fit with our risk appetite, and that maybe were not sufficient for the client, but at least that would be an alternative for him. And also have a plan B with institutional lenders, so that clearly, usually it's much more expensive, but also maybe they have more risk appetite. And that's something we are able to do, that we do obviously in a very transparent manner to the different parties, so there's no hidden agenda. But that helps us really bring a solution to the client at the end. And then thirdly, we've helped a few very successful founders to help them to start monetize their wealth. Usually most of it, like the vast majority, is tied into their business. And not all of them want to IPO or be diluted, but we have the ability in some cases to help them get financing in this context. And what we've shown, it's really incredible that they are able to start to monetize and they grow investment portfolios with us. So it's a true win-win solution.
Looking ahead, how do you source new client relationships?
So first, we rely a lot on the team's direct network. And I would say by trying to do a good job for our clients, then if they are really happy, they tend to also talk to their friends and business partners. So these types of introductions are really the best, but you have to earn them. I think what's very encouraging is also the collaboration with our wealth management colleagues is really growing. It's leading to more and more mutual referrals as well. Then, of course, like we do today, we have to work on the brand, and we've spent a lot of time in the last 12 months also meeting other key players in the Swiss banking industry to get better known, because we are still a newcomer in this field. And finally, we always have to do a cold calling as well. That's part of the job. And it actually works quite well in the current context, because clearly there is a gap in some areas in terms of banking partners. People see that we have a credible and a coherent story. So it's a fairly easy call these days.
Now this year comes to an end. What are your next steps and priorities in 2026?
So we have a mandate to continue to grow the team, so including with selected hires of senior resources for the team. So that's I would say the base business. And also we've seen a need also to offer, I would say, limited corporate banking services, which we have not really done so far. And there we can really build on the expertise of our colleagues in Luxembourg with a Swiss finish, of course, and we'll announce in a few weeks the hire of a senior resource for this business. And the focus will remain exactly on the same clients, so business owners, entrepreneurs, but with this added service of corporate banking, so that we are able to onboard those clients earlier on in their life cycle and not wait for the big M&A or acquisition that comes.
That sounds very interesting. Thank you very much, Rémy Savoya, for this interview. All the best in 2026.
Thank you, Claude.
Thank you.